All right.
Whoa! Welcome back to the Commuters.
Now this is podcasting.
It's working! It's working!
Welcome back to another episode of the Commuters. We are finally getting on top of our Star Wars ones.
I disagree.
We're getting below our Star Wars ones.
Yes, yeah. We're going behind, actually.
Beneath them, if you will. So we're doing the prequels. And as we all know, prequels are the best Star Wars movies ever made. And
There is something good about the prequels. The memes.
Oh.
Yes. Although I will say my favorite Star Wars movie is in the prequels.
Oh,
what?
Well, look at that.
Yep.
What?
We have
So
a
let's,
sympathizer here.
We'll get there.
Let's talk about that.
Let's start
Stop.
at the beginning. The plan from the very beginning.
Right.
I mean, George Lucas totally thought he was going to have a CGI frog.
This will be fun.
Phantom Menace.
Yep.
Oh boy.
Who wants to start?
Me?
All right, Sky.
So I have a very weird opinion of this movie. And by weird I mean not because I'm like contradictory and I'm like one of those people that's like I love this movie. Phantom Menace is so good. I'm like,
but it's not as bad as everyone says.
I don't know what I feel about it because every time I revisit it, I'm like, this is a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
This is a terrible idea. This is executed really well. This is garbage. And I find myself never completely sure where I land with it. I enjoy certain aspects, like I enjoy Qui-Gon Jinn, and I do like the idea that we get to see the Jedi Order during that time frame a little bit. We see it more, obviously, way more in the next two films. But I think it's a nice little place to start, and I actually like the appeal of looking at a conflict that is relatively small at the moment. It's like a little, they're separatists. They're a bunch of people who were doing some not so good stuff, and you're like, this is weird, not good. And it starts you with a small conflict to build you into the bigger one.
Right.
Which
they weren't even separatists yet. It was just a conflict between the banking clans trying to get... Was it that Naboo owed money and they were trying to get money out of them and that they were just extorting them for money?
Remember too
and
well because
that's one of the weaker
not...
points of it, yeah. They don't
But
really touch on it. But yeah, I mean, this is what blows up and creates the separatist movement because some people thought that, yeah, the banking clan's within their rights to do this. They're cool, and then the Galactic Empire, or what they thought, the Senate was just getting down on the little guys.
The important part about this, though, is that it's a stepping stone into what would later be, I'm Palpatine. I'm going to start dropping things in situations. I'm going to build this master plan that may or may not go until very, very, very far into the future when my certain person does a certain thing. Haha. I hate...
But we are to talk about the Phantom Menace. So that was a pretty positive, actually, much more positive take than I maybe expected.
Mind you, I'm not saying the whole film. The problem is that what is good is followed up by very bad.
Yeah.
Like Jar Jar.
All right, so give me...
But not just Jar Jar.
Give me an example of a good thing in that movie.
Okay, I actually think pod racing and that scene itself is very interesting and entertaining. Mm-hmm. It's cool, and I can see it fitting into the Star Wars universe reliably. It's a little long, but it's fine.
That's what she said.
Another good thing. I like seeing the Jedi Order, and I think it's important to establish them as something. We also see them as peacekeepers, more so in this film than...
Yeah.
Right off the bat, too, because they're just negotiators, Yeah,
and we see that apparently they don't feel like negotiating. We also get a lot of cool, dynamic droids in this movie. Mm-hmm. What I mean by that is the droidicas are cool. I think they're established. They look like toys, but we know what the appeal for that was. Right. I also like the...
I just wanted to say right out the bat, kind of get this out of the way.
Yeah.
I do not accept complaining about Star Wars being merchandisable as a valid criticism of Star Wars because from the get-go, Star Wars is to merchandise stormtroopers, lightsabers.
Boba Fett was a toy before he was a character.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't consider that a negative at this point. That is completely a part of what Star Wars is.
No, he was in the Christmas.
I don't hold that against Disney either. That's
special.
just what Star Wars is.
Disney, put the Christmas special on Disney Plus. Anyway, I don't think merchandising. I think the merchandise is cool to a degree.
Yeah, I mean that's just what Star Wars is.
Now, am I gonna say I'm gonna go out and collect all of it because haha, it's so cool? the Naboo starfighters are really cool. They're slick and angular, and I really love their designs. I always did. I like a lot of the conceptual ideas there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you weight it down with so much bad. It's like I would describe the Phantom Menace as walking through a swamp. It's like it's an interesting experience, and there's good things maybe here, like some of those flowers you see on the side, but at the end of the day, you're still walking through a swamp.
And they did in Phantom Menace. They went through a swamp.
Yeah, they did.
That's another bit that I know a lot of people really don't like, the entire prelude of like meeting the Gungans, going to the underwater city, and then coming back up, and then the plot actually starts moving forward. I always laughed at the underwater scene as a kid. I thought that was funny, getting to see Jar Jar just pass out as they're trying to fix the ship, and the bit with Qui-Gon, seeing the fish eat the bigger fish behind it, and going, "There's always a bigger fish."
Oh, I agree. As a kid, I thought it was funny.
Mm-hmm.
I should like right from the get-go. I loved the prequels when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I loved them. Rewatching them, I don't really know how that. With the exception of Revenge of the Sith to an extent, I don't know how I wasn't bored to death in the Phantom Menace. If you mind, I'm just gonna kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So the Phantom Menace, rewatching it. This is the first time I've watched it in like, I want to say 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably the first time I've watched this movie in 5 years. My tastes have evolved, changed, what have you, as everyone's do.
Soured.
Well, anyways, so this movie, like you said, there are some good elements to it. I mean, the design of most everything is very, very within Star Wars, but also kind of unique and original and new. Expanding the universe, you have new planets, you have new conflicts, new aliens. It's cool.
Yeah.
The Darth Maul fight at the end, excellent. Darth Maul's design, excellent.
I think we need to also say the music is always,
as
usual, top notch. It's so
honestly,
good.
Yeah.
Maybe the best in the series.
It's up there.
Like Duel of the Fates is probably my favorite like dark side theme in the entire series. But
I wouldn't say Duel of the Fates is a dark side theme. That's one of the.
I thought it's like a clashing sound.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a motif for quarrel.
Okay, but that's what I mean. It's like a theme that plays during combat.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should probably correct that. Anyways, but the issue is every time I get to one of those moments, like pod racing or Duel of the Fates, I'm like, I just don't care about these characters. Like, Obi-Wan is almost not even a character in this film. And really what they should have done is focus on Obi-Wan. But they're just like, no, he's there, but also Anakin's there, and Qui-Gon's like teaching Obi-Wan, but he's also teaching Anakin.
Yeah.
And then through a whole, like an hour of this film, Obi-Wan's just sitting in a ship tinkering with an engine. And it's like the entire Tatooine subplot, Obi-Wan does nothing.
Yeah.
He just sits on the ship and then's like, oh yeah, that sounds like a thing. And
Whereas
it's like,
Qui-Gon is like kind of there the whole time
he's
with
doing
Anakin
all the stuff.
Which I think it's interesting because we went from the classic trilogy, which absolutely had definitive main characters,
Yes.
to the prequels where until later on, like
Yeah.
for Phantom Menace, I can't point to a main
There isn't
character.
one.
I don't know if it's Anakin, if it's Qui-Gon or Obi-Wan.
Or Padme.
It could be Padme.
It could be Darth Maul. I don't know.
Yeah. It felt more like a fable getting retold from the perspective of like history and time than an actual story with characters in the moment.
Yeah, that's
because
kind of a good way of putting it.
Obi-Wan was this, old wise kind of hermit-esque. I mean, he was a Grail Knight basically in Star Wars, and in this he was just kind of a squire doing grunt shit.
Yeah.
Go sit on the ship, Obi-Wan, make sure it doesn't get stolen.
Exactly, and they don't really give us like what are Obi-Wan's like fears in this movie? What are his like desires outside of like Jedi improvement? What are his personal desires?
I feel like the
what
only
does Qui-Gon?
I feel like the only time we see him like exude like actual emotion
Is
and
when
like
Qui-Gon dies.
which you feel like I will say I'm like that sucks. You feel it in the moment, but at the same time you're like this is the only time he's really established that.
Right.
It doesn't even feel like they're much of a teacher-master
That's what I'm
thing
saying.
throughout the film.
And that
I
does
mean-
go into Qui-Gon's character, but you wouldn't get that from just this movie.
Yeah,
You
this
would
movie
have to-
doesn't
You'd have to
establish
know. Yeah.
And that's the thing is like you watch something like Karate Kid, and you have Mr. Miyagi and Ralph Macchio, and they have this great mentor dynamic, like teacher, mentor, student, whatever dynamic, and about these characters, and what matters to them, and why they need to do these things and like all about their inner desires. And it's like here it's just like, oh yeah, I'm your teacher, you're my student. This is like going to class, and that's a teacher and this is a student, and that is their relationship.
Right.
Instead of a personal mentorship, like an apprenticeship. Which
is fine because technically Obi-Wan was still a Padawan.
Yeah, he was his apprentice, and I wanted them to connect more, have more banter, have more like personality. Whereas everything just feels very stale to me in this film. Like, as from a human perspective, from a world perspective, I like a lot of the stuff, and I find it very interesting, but I think they just waste too much time on the world, like on, okay, this is taxing trade routes, and this is...
Especially because none of this... the only part of this that really ends up mattering is the Separatist movement itself and Qui-Gon's death.
Yes.
And Anakin.
I was going to say, it's pretty much just Anakin.
Yeah, it's weird, because you establish this conflict. I make a point, I'm like, this is a cool idea that you start with a small conflict that leads into more. The only thing is, you never hear anyone care about Naboo again. Yeah. You never hear anyone reference, like... anything that happens in this movie besides the established things that move forward.
Exactly.
And it feels like it's like, oh, a civil war was essentially born here, except it wasn't. It's more like...
something happened here and then everyone picked sides later on.
Yeah, it's weird.
And it's interesting, too, the way that they took it back this far, because really our only tie-in to what happened previously in the original trilogy was the Clone Wars. You know, it got name-dropped by Obi-Wan. That was the big thing that had happened.
You fought in the Clone Wars? Yes. I was once a Jedi Knight, the same as your father.
And that didn't happen until Episode 2.
And, like, late into Episode 2.
Yeah, exactly.
That's an issue. I've seen some people, like, say that what he should have done is start the prequels with, like, Episode 3. Like, the entirety of Episode 3 should have been 3 movies. And that's where you stick the prequels.
I'm pretty sure I'm the one who said that to you, because that's my belief.
Because it makes... That's when everything happens.
Yeah. I think it should have been... it should have dipped its toe into the end of Episode 2, like, from a chronological perspective, and then established, okay, this is happening, this is why, there's the Trade Federation, which created the Separatist movement, and the Senate is torn.
Or you just start with the Separatist movement.
Yeah, and then moving into the war and showing it all as it is, kind of like the middle of 3, and then the end of 3 is when everything hits the fan.
I can see what you mean. Kind of like start with somewhere into, maybe not start with 2, but like later into it, and then that does sound way better, because that would also give 3 the time it needs to breathe.
Anything else to say about Phantom Menace?
I'm glad it happened for Darth Maul and Duel of the Fates and some gem moments.
I will say, I agree. There's gem moments. There's a lot. I mean, thanks to this movie, I did get the Naboo Starfighter, and it's like one of my favorites, actually. It's that cool.
Yeah, it's super cool.
And you never see it again. Again, one of those things, I'm like, you have all this potential here, and you're like, fuck it.
Anyways.
You just flip it.
I will say, though, one last tack on, I really think this showed the dark side of the Star Wars fandom. Because if you look at the reception of this amongst like the hardcore fan base, look at the kid who played little Anakin Skywalker. That guy's life got ruined because of this movie. His life was forever changed for the worse.
Yeah,
because he just acted in a movie.
It's one of those things, right? Merchandising, toxic fan base. This has been part of Star Wars since the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think like it's disingenuous to be like, oh, The Last Jedi is the first time there's been some kind of divide in the Star Wars fan base. And we'll talk about that when we get to that episode. But
exactly.
Yeah. So let's kind of give our recommendations, I guess, about Episode 1.
I still think it's worth seeing, mostly from a, like, you gotta see what divided people so hard in the beginning. Because this is the beginning of a new trilogy. When it came out, I remember my dad was, like, speechless. He was like, how? What?
Yeah.
Why are we here? And he was really, like, weirded out by it. He came around eventually once we got into the next 2 films, but it's a dividing point, and I think that's important to note.
Yeah.
That this was a big moment. It's like Star Wars was so strong, and you come back to this?
Absolutely.
So.
And they put so much prep time into it, too.
Yeah, he had, like, 20 years.
I would rate it if we were, like, putting numbers onto it. If not...
I think we should move away from numbers.
Yeah.
I think we'll stick with, like, recommendations.
Sure. I would definitely say to see it. I think out of all of the 3 of us, I'm definitely the guy who's most able to wade through shit in movies in order to just find something enjoyable. And I think that's...
You're more optimistic
I'm fine with plugging my nose.
Yeah, which I kind of
through a movie.
Respect.
I'm okay with that, as long as there's something that I think is worth it. And Phantom Menace definitely has moments that are worth it. That beautiful scream. Please plug it. The scream when they're pod racing and the little alien's about to hit like the stalactite thing in the cave, and he goes and dies. That's worth it for me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, not to mention in Duel of the Fates and Darth Maul and all that jazz. That's all fun. But, I definitely say it's worth seeing.
I am going to come on the other side of this. I honestly, unless you really, really care about Star Wars, I would say just watch a YouTube recap with, if you want to see Duel of the Fates and that fight, which from a choreographing perspective and a music perspective, it's amazing. Mm-hmm. But I think you get just as much emotion of watching that on its own and watching the whole movie and seeing it, in my opinion. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to watch unless you just want to see kind of this why people talk about it the way they do.
Yeah.
And what started off the prequels to be the way they are. Honestly, I think and we'll talk about it in a second, but I think you can watch Revenge of the Sith and get the entire story of the prequels that matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, I mean, there's stuff in it, and that's why I say, just YouTube it.
Yeah.
I can't say I would really recommend it, though. It's very long, and it's very boring, and it's hard to watch. There are periods where...
It may seem irrelevant. Yeah.
Let me... If you're drunk... I think you could have a fun time with this movie where there's there's very bad CGI and there's some really weird jokes specifically around Jar Jar, who I don't actually think is the worst part of this movie.
No.
I think people they don't know exactly what to critique, so they just funnel it to Jar Jar.
Jar Jar's the mascot for all of their problems.
Jar Jar has personality. So many people don't have personality in this film. At least he has personality.
Here's the thing, though. It's not a good one.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
The reason people funnel so much at Jar Jar, we can supercut this out if you want, whatever you decide. But the main reason everyone funnels their hatred towards him isn't just because he's the comic relief. He's a comic relief that feels completely set for children. And this is something that is so common in movies nowadays.
Yeah.
You build a character who is built from the ground up to make children laugh. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, which I don't mind that if the film itself wasn't something that's trying to be enjoyed by everyone.
Yeah, I don't think you should make a character designed towards children if those children can't buy a ticket, walk into the theater themselves and see it. And what rating was Phantom Menace? PG-13?
No, it's PG.
Yeah. So what's the age
Revenge
limit
of the Sith
PG?
is the first PG-13.
Yeah.
PG is 12 and under.
12 and under. Okay. 12 and under or 12 and up?
12 and under.
12 and under?
For PG.
Yeah, for PG.
Yeah, okay. 12 and under. It's G, PG, PG-13, R.
Well, why...
XXX. No.
I think we're diving too hard.
I'll ask that question later.
Anyways, so that is The Phantom Menace. Attack of the Clones.
Yeah. Attack of the thing that we heard about, and we were like, oh, it's happening. We're going to see the clones. And then we watch the movie.
Yep.
And we see the clones maybe for the last third.
Yep. Might I say, if I may, that I love sand. I think it's coarse and rough and irritating, just the way I like it.
Is this a joke on the fact that we spend so much time on sand planets?
No, it's a bit from Anakin having no emotion.
It's the meme.
And sinking time.
Oh.
Anyways.
No, I want to go back to mine then. Why is there so many sand planets? Can we have less sand? You have an entire universe of cool set pieces.
We cut. There's a specific point where we cut from Obi-Wan on Geonosis to Anakin on Tatooine.
You don't realize it's a different
They
planet.
color Tatooine red because he's speeding in the sunset, and it looks red. And they play Duel of the Fates.
Looks like Anakin's on his way to go help his master.
Got much time. Anakin, do you copy? This is Obi-Wan Kenobi.
But we're skipping way ahead here.
Yeah.
All right, so
we gotta cut the memes.
Yes.
I think I'll start us off. I feel differently about Attack of the Clones than I do about Phantom Menace. And I think most people hate Phantom Menace the most because it's got the corniest CG and Jar Jar's in it. And like you said, a lot of the characters are just kind of plasticky, and they introduced metachlorians. We forgot to talk about that because we all try and block it out of our mind. At least they tried something. Attack of the Clones did nothing else other than to introduce what clones are. They could have made a short. It could have been Star Wars 1.2 of Obi-Wan going to Kamino with that whole arc of the missing planet, finding Jango, learning about that, and then cut it. That's it. That's all they needed to do to then go into Episode 3. Everything else is filler.
Worst part is, everyone knows what clones are just by the name.
Well, all right.
Yeah,
I'm gonna defend a little part of that aspect of the clones. We don't really know. They bring up the Clone Wars, but you're like, you have questions related to that.
You've
Like,
got
who's being cloned?
You've got no
Why
image,
are they doing that?
No image in your head of what the clones were.
Yeah, I had no idea what exactly they meant by Clone Wars. I'm like, that could mean anything.
Right. There could have been no clones in it, but just someone had like a philosophical difference.
Yeah, it could have been any number of things.
Do you think George Lucas was just like, you know what would it sound cool? The war was like
totally
the Clone Wars.
I do. I think it was a toss-up, like a flip of the coin between, do we do the Android Wars or the Clone Wars?
The Replicant Wars?
Right, replicants.
I don't want to ever hear the word Replicant Wars. Ever.
It may have been inspired by, you know?
Alright, well, anyway, the clones are... I know everyone's like, oh, I introduced the clones and whatever. It is cool.
Oh, yeah.
I will say,
awesome.
the clones are cool. Jango's cool, except he doesn't do anything in this movie.
Just like Boba Fett.
God, it's so... What happened? Why are all bounty hunters in the Star Wars universe so lame?
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
You can't say 88 models don't do anything because they did do something.
Hell yeah,
in
they
Mandalorian.
Did. Yeah,
They're actually pretty cool in the little bit we get to see from them.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But this isn't a Mandalorian
No,
review.
this is not it. So, yeah, I think...
But in reference to our token Mandalorian.
I do like Jango. He doesn't do anything. I like the clones.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this movie introduces them, and there are really good moments with them, and they get a lot from this point on.
Right.
Like, we don't see it in the movies, but they get their own love in their own series and stuff. And
there is a moment, I think it's in 2, I'm pretty sure it's in 2, but it might be in 3, so correct me if I'm wrong, where Obi-Wan and maybe Yoda are watching the clones all assemble for battle and go march onto one of the cruisers. Yeah, and they have this really nice introspective moment of, oh god, wait, did we just become generals? Are we gonna be leading these guys? You know, and they dropped the ball so hard with the Sifo-Dyas plot line. Because that could have been so cool, though. You know, the one militant rogue Jedi setting up for events that he knew was going to happen in the future. Instead of Obi-Wan, like, doing his old infiltration arc into Geonosis, it could have been him finding Sifo-Dyas and figuring that out.
As a kid, I thought Sifo-Dyas was Count Dooku.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Because that would have made sense, and it would have made the thing much better.
If he orchestrated the whole thing before he left.
Or, like, if Sifo-Dyas was shown in the movie, like... It doesn't. It's such a weird.
It's another name
point.
drop like Clone Wars. You know, it's just something to stoke interest, to keep it to keep intrigue up.
Okay. Can I want to talk a little bit about our favorite part of this movie.
Anakin Skywalker.
Anakin Skywalker. So the romance. There's something so uncomfortable about their relationship right from the get-go. Like, the way he's like, oh, you're so much prettier than last time we met. Dude, you were 9, and she was 12, or 13, or... No, she was like 16.
She was like 14 or 15, yeah.
And it's like, it's just, it's uncomfortable, and the way he talks to her, and it's like...
Annie? My goodness, you've grown.
So have you. Grown more beautiful, I mean. Well, for a senator, I mean.
Annie, you'll always be that little boy I knew on Tatooine.
The whole romance is one of the most... It's just very uncomfortable to watch it all.
Yeah,
like, by the end, it's a little less uncomfortable, but...
Yeah, she's a young woman
maybe
who has...
get used to it.
She's a young woman who's got experience leading a country. You know, she was a queen at 16, representing an entire planet's worth of people in the middle of a civil war invasion. He was a kid. And granted, he's seen his fair share of death and struggle and whatever, but there's this weird emotional maturity divide between the two, where she's very cordial and mature, and at least trying to present herself that way,
as like
Skywalker.
Yeah,
and then Anakin's over here eating bugs.
Exactly.
That's a reference.
Yeah, to the Clone Wars.
so much of this movie is just wasted convolution and wasted time.
A lot of...
Why would you hire... I mean, I've seen other YouTubers make fun of this, but it's so on point. Why would Palpatine hire Count Dooku to hire Jango Fett to hire a different bounty hunter to have a droid to have bugs kill Padme? Why couldn't Jango Fett just do it? Or Count Dooku just do it? Or why didn't they just go right to that chick who Jango Fett hired? Why is so much of the plot this, like, oh, it's so much like hats. There's way too many hats. You gotta just simplify, George.
Because,
okay?
man.
Simplify.
Because, man, we need to not let Jango just do whatever. We gotta have a plot for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
So many
that
hats.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like,
do you want my actual defense of it, or do you want, like...
You can defend
me to
it.
agree? From a devil's advocate standpoint, the only excuse I could possibly have is they need to have degrees of separation between everything.
But
because
how
if
many degrees?
If Count Dooku just did it, and then he got captured or caught or killed, they'd go, wait, Dooku's alive? Why does he have that red lightsaber? Fuck, is he a Sith? Are Sith a thing now?
He could just choke her from across the street.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a level of, like, disbelief here that, like, even the human mind doesn't want to deal with. And that's the problem here, is there's a lot of disbelief throughout a lot of the Clone Wars film.
I have a couple of positives, and I think I'm going to say them now. I think that the ending sequence with all the clones in that battle, it's like, besides the fact that everything's CGI, from a framing and a color and like a visual
gorgeous.
standpoint, it's beautiful. Like they do the thing, first Star Wars movie, by the way, to have lasers reflect in the environment. And there's that part where like a bunch of dust is flying everywhere and the droids are shooting and the lasers are... That looks amazing.
Yes.
It's super cool.
It still looks amazing.
There's a lot of really cool visuals there, and I wish the whole movie was that. But anyways,
they just blew all their budget on that sequence, and then they needed pad time.
Yes.
Is my big guess.
I think that's a positive. I like the idea of the chase through Coruscant. I think it's cool to be like, oh, this is a seedy, almost cyberpunk city.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
You kind of have
it's a
this
cool
like
set piece, and then we had to establish the home of the Jedi Order at some point. They talk about it.
I like that. I just it's execution that kind of like, I mean, Obi-Wan berates Anakin for being too reckless,
and then he
after Obi-Wan jumped out of a window to catch a robot in 1,000 or 2,000 feet building.
See, but that's the fun part, though, is because Anakin and Obi-Wan absolutely did not have, and it ties into the first movie in my own belief, the way that Obi-Wan didn't have a parental relationship with Qui-Gon. He was more detached, kind of like an uncle or a great uncle would be than a father-son. Anakin and Obi-Wan don't have a master's-teacher relationship. They're brothers. It's an older brother relationship. Yeah. And that's such an older brother. How many times have you had an older brother tell you to not do something just to go do it?
I'll tell you this right now, though. George Lucas was not thinking about that.
No.
George Lucas was, he jumps out. Oh, and then because Obi-Wan's the wise mentor, he berates him for being too reckless because George Lucas 10 seconds later forgot that he had him jump out a window.
See, but a life rule of mine is I don't let other people's idiocy ruin my fun.
Oh, no, I'm not saying you can't enjoy it, but I'm also saying that, like, I'm not sitting here, I'm not going to defend George Lucas's decisions.
No, absolutely not.
Whereas you can have incidental in your mind, you can be like, okay, well, this is how I interpret it.
Right.
But when the creator made it this way, and it's dumb, that makes the creator look dumb.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I stand on that. Like, and there's nothing wrong with enjoying it, and because art's up for interpretation to an extent, but, oh, George, just why?
Yeah, that's my take. Is I mean,
yeah, none of us talked about the gladiator combat thing, which is fine.
Gladiator
that's okay.
Which I hate.
See, it's so forgettable you don't even remember it.
That's
when
the
they chained him to the
movie.
poles.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Why is that in this movie?
Why
are you doing a gladiator combat thing when you should just kill them?
Because it's funner, even though you could.
No, like it doesn't make. There's. This sums up the prequels in general for me.
What was I gonna say? There's so much.
The fight between Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Dooku. We should talk about that.
It sucks.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's bad. How do you go from Duel of the Fates with them with you literally the movie before have one of the best choreographed like.
I'm gonna show a cut in this episode where it's Count Dooku versus Anakin, and it's like close-ups on their face, and they're waving their lightsabers around, and it's cut in the most weird, Uncomfortable. I don't know what the editing was, what was going on, but there's no actual. It's so weird.
I also want to talk about the fact that the moment that Anakin gets his arm cut off, it doesn't look right.
Yeah.
If you get what I mean. Have you seen like the no, not like visually. I mean like it feels like they stopped choreographing at that point. They're just like, and then he gets his arm chopped off.
Right.
And it's like I don't know what happens with that.
And it's almost got this explosive quality when the lightsaber touches him too, where it's like it barely touches his arm before the entire thing falls
there's
down.
a lot of just like this whole sequence looks bad. The fight isn't exciting. I even as a kid when I saw that, I was like, I don't feel like I had as much fun as I did with the last movie, which says something.
Yeah.
I think Clone Wars is actually a remarkably more boring film. It just has more important things happen.
Exactly. Yeah, because we see the start of the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Like the whole point of this movie was to get to the end, which
I will say
it was a crawl too.
I will say I don't dislike Dooku. I think he's an interesting.
Lee,
you can't go wrong with Christopher Lee.
I love him.
Here's the thing: most of the time this, this actually applies to the original trilogy, but George Lucas isn't the greatest actor-director.
Yeah.
So when George Lucas actors do good, it's usually because he got actors who know how to add their own flair on a role.
Yeah.
So you see Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, and Carrie Fisher all kind of knew their characters and knew what they wanted to do. George Lucas was like, well, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
The issue was, when you get to more professional acting, you need to listen to your director. And the only one who kind of took their role in the first trilogy, like, and kind of made it their own was Ewan McGregor.
Yep.
And then to a lesser extent, someone like Christopher Lee, who oozes charisma, oozes, like, just quality acting. It doesn't matter how bad the director is at directing actors, he's going to give you a good performance.
Right. The guy's been James Bond and Dracula. I think he can do both.
We should go look at James Bond films sometime.
Yeah, maybe.
But anyway, he's great. I will say it's such a shame that, like you said, only a few people really exude that kind of atmosphere for their characters, because there's a lot of characters in this movie that you think would be really entertaining, such as, I'm not going to say it, but I'm going to say it, Yoda's not interesting in this film.
Yeah.
I don't find Mace. I don't find
flip around in the fight at the end.
Yeah, I will say that sequence is fun for me. Like, oh wow, we get to see how he fights. It's not exactly well choreographed because it looks like Christopher Lee's just like
Star Wars.
Yeah.
Just doing this,
but Yoda flip around with the lightsaber is so anti-Yoda.
Mace Windu's not entertaining in this film. I was excited to see him do stuff. He's not entertaining. I find it's weird to see. It's weird to say Samuel Jackson feels very
rigid.
Yeah, which is so weird,
right?
Yeah,
like that's not what you usually get out of Samuel Jackson. Like even when it's a movie, like he's in a lot of not very good movies, but he usually brings like.
I mean, you look.
He
at
feels like Samuel Jackson.
Yeah,
look at movie. I don't feel like I know him.
Look at the roles that he's played, though. I mean, his big archetypal character at that time when Attack of the Clones was being made was the character that swears a lot and is really loud.
Yeah.
And he's playing a peacetime negotiator.
Yeah, so it's the complete opposite of what you would expect.
I will say he breaks a little bit when we get into Revenge of the Sith. He's a little better there.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's because his character's given an opportunity to talk and do things.
And he was really good in the animated Clone Wars series, which we were talking about because it has a direct tie-in to Episode 3.
That's true.
It came out right before.
We do need to bring this up because
we got to talk
super
about it.
Important.
I mean, that's not really the point of this episode, but we can talk about it.
We still got to do like 2 minutes.
There is not a good tie between 2 and 3 in the form of movie creation here.
Yeah.
The two of them are not well tied together, and you're suddenly thrust into a battle with new characters who you don't know who they are, Grievous.
We see this repeated in another trilogy.
Yeah, you just feel dropped into the situation, and this is horrible. I will say, from a standpoint of continuity, this is confusing for audiences. It will make people confused. Now, were there ties? Yes, we had a really, really fun animated series that dived into it.
But that was their only excuse for making a tie from 2 to 3.
And that's an excuse.
Yeah.
And
so
that's something that's...
Let's give our final thoughts about episode 2. Episode 2 can't really recommend it. I think it's a waste of time, honestly, and I think you can just skip it and go right to 3.
Absolutely. It's all filler, all padding, just for a little bit of exposition and the tagline of it being finally the Clone Wars.
Yes.
Yeah, it pretty much sums up everything I thought. It's not something that I would go back to watch. It doesn't have the cultural importance to the community that Phantom Menace had, and the good just doesn't warrant the bad for me.
All it establishes is what the clones are and how Anakin lost his arm.
Yep.
Yeah. So now the thing that so unfortunately, Revenge of the Sith, I like the movie a lot, but the opening is bad. I really don't like it. Not from a standpoint of what happens here is bad. I'm saying you drop us in the middle of something that has absolutely no context, and that's not a good thing usually. I get where you're coming from, unless you're doing something like you're purposely telling the story out of order, a la Memento, what have you. But there was you mentioned it, Spencer.
Yeah, the 2003 Cartoon Network Star Wars The Clone Wars animated like TV miniseries, I would say, because really it would only give you like 5-minute episodes every week for
it wasn't
a couple
even 5
weeks.
minutes.
It was really short, yeah. But it went on for a little while and led right up into the release of Revenge of the Sith, which, you know, as a kid was awesome, but watching it as an adult at that point would have been tedious and just really irresponsible for Star Wars to have to, like, bring their audience up to speed with a spin-off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not even considered canon anymore, unfortunately.
Sadly, because it's so good.
It was made by... I forget his first name. Is it Greg?
Gendy Tartakovsky.
Gendy. It's always Gendy.
Samurai Jack.
If you want to see something that's like... I wish it was canon, because it's some of the coolest fighting choreography I've seen in like a Star Wars-related media. It's really cool, but it covers who General Grievous is a little bit. You get to see some Dooku, and a character that shows up in the Clone Wars cartoon later.
Asajj Ventress.
Yes.
Yep, that's her intro. And... you can argue with me if you want. I stand by it. It is the only instance we've ever seen of Grievous being actually dangerous. And scary.
Also, what's her name?
I think we see that in the 3D animated show a little bit.
Not as much.
Oh, also, don't forget the fact that Shakti dies in that.
No, she doesn't.
Too.
Yeah, she's unconscious.
No, she dies in that.
She dies in that. He's right. Because I watched this.
There's a second season that she dies.
She dies 3 different times in the Star Wars media.
We'll never figure out what's up with her.
Mace Windu, we've had this conversation. Mace Windu wakes her up. She's been electrified and subdued in the subway after they leave, and she goes, "I failed," and speaks.
I thought she died.
Well,
no.
I will have footage of all her deaths.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, do that.
Stinking Jedi.
I will cook.
No.
Soon enough.
Yeah, so Revenge of the Sith, the opening, I know I just complained about it. It's strong. It's immediately more fun. Immediately, you also notice, whoa, Anakin's not quite as bad.
Yeah, he has some personality.
Yeah, he's just a completely different person in Revenge of the
everything
Sith.
looks fantastic. It's a very exciting opening to the movie.
There's
color
movies.
Too. There's so much color in the movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're right.
For banter.
Yep.
For actual banter between Anakin and Obi-Wan, we waited this entire time. Like, the most they had in Revenge of the Sith was, like, one side comment. In this, we actually get some actual banter where you're like, I could kind of tell these guys are buddies. Like, I can tell that these guys are, like, friends.
It's kind of weird that, like, this movie opens up immediately better than the other two.
Also, the only Star Wars movie to do a one take. The opening shot, so that one take follows them, goes around that ship. Insanely cool. Like
the missile tracking, you mean?
No, it follows their ships. So like it comes in and it follows their ships flying under a ship, and then they kind of come around and it shows the battle.
Yep.
And it's this long take, and it's really cool.
Yeah,
it's super impressive. It's hard to do those kind of things, like especially with digital stuff, where you have to like render like the background and then the foreground and the middle ground, like all separate, and like it's really impressive.
Yeah, it's super fun. And then we get introduced to a new character. We get to meet General Grievous. We find out the situation with the what's going on. There's a lot that happens so fast, and it's really exciting.
Yeah,
it's really fun. We get to see Christopher Lee again via Dooku, which is
and the Magna Guards, which were really cool.
They're cool. Yeah. There's a lot of just cool in this movie.
Absolutely.
And I think that's something that immediately shows you, wow, I feel like the other two movies don't matter, and this one's picking up real fast.
Yeah.
And it's sad to say that it took the prelude of the animated Clone Wars to get me to care enough about Dooku to feel something when he got killed
at his death.
Yeah, because that's That's not even relevant from Anakin's like personal journey because he already had a moment where he slaughtered women and children.
Yeah,
out
but
in
this
the
is
desert.
another thing where he literally just beheaded a man just like ceremoniously in front of.
The Jedi have always killed. Like Obi-Wan chopped free. Like that's what the Jedi do.
Yeah, here's the thing.
He maimed, he
think that's
dismembered, but he didn't kill.
This is a situation where I feel
meant
like
to kill.
I feel like the rules.
Or else he would have killed him.
Okay, we're not going to talk about.
I think the
Darth Maul
rules
was
are...
only brought back to life as a fan
Oh, you mean
service.
Darth Maul?
Yeah.
I thought you meant the thing in Episode 4 where he lops the thing's arm off in Mos Eisley.
Oh, I was talking about Darth Maul.
Okay, no, he meant to kill him.
To be fair, Darth Maul has a really good arc, but we can't
but we're
talk
not.
about that.
No.
We could do a Clone Wars episode someday.
We should.
Oh no, this isn't even Clone Wars. Unfortunately, he doesn't get his conclusion until Rebels.
And
we
can do a Darth Maul episode someday.
It's
but anyways,
so bad. Anyway, yeah. So
when Dooku dies,
Dooku dies. It's supposed to be a big moment, and you're like, "Oh no, Anakin, don't do it." And this whole movie is about,
Anakin.
Yeah. I think the only thing that it does is give precedent to the idea that Palpatine has sway over Anakin, that he can persuade him to do things. Because Anakin knows in his mind that it's not right and that he shouldn't, because he says it out loud. I shouldn't. No, it's not the Jedi way.
And then he kills him. And 2 seconds later says, I shouldn't have done that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Also, who plays Palpatine?
Praise be Ian McDiarmid.
Yes.
Ian McDiarmid, the best part of the prequels. He's probably the best part overall, one of the best parts of Star Wars.
Him and Ewan McGregor, man.
So much just personality, so much color in his crazy evil, and then I love watching him switch between the I'm just a nice old man, and then this psycho evil power.
Yeah, it's a good time. He's great.
There's a lot of fun.
I feel like the reason we didn't bring that up though is because he doesn't really do as much till this movie.
Yeah,
this movie is where he full on embodies that character.
Which is why...
But you can argue that that's okay because he's finally just now become in a position of power. He's only just now being elected the Chancellor.
Yeah.
You know, he was lower than Padme, the 16-year-old girl in Phantom Menace. Power-wise, he had less sway. He was just a senator from Naboo.
Once again, I want to restate that I think that this should have been where the trilogy takes place within the Clone Wars. It should have started at the beginning of the Clone Wars. So the end of Episode 2 is where the first movie, maybe the second act of the first movie is the end of Episode 2, and then the next at the end of that movie, I don't know, ends with the first major Clone Wars battle, not the opening battle, but the first conclusive battle where it's we have a solid victory, but we still have a war to fight.
Right.
And then the second movie is all Clone Wars, like the TV show, and then the third movie is the ending of the Clone Wars and the transition into the Empire. And the entire time, Chancellor Palpatine is the Chancellor.
Yeah.
And the top power guy in the galaxy.
Yeah, it would have given us... I love that idea because it would have given us, plenty of time to establish the war itself, what's going on, who's here, who's important, see the roles of Anakin and Obi-Wan in that whole section.
Well, they wouldn't have changed dramatically from boy to man to where they would have had to completely reestablish their dynamic like they had to.
Exactly.
And we would have had lots of seeing the Chancellor dip his fingers in situations that you get this feeling that, oh god, this guy is manipulated so much to get us where we are now. Whereas, it feels like he's only important in this movie.
Yeah. And
it's weird. I mean...
Yeah. Moving back to how Revenge of the Sith was and not how it shouldn't have been. Because there's a whole series for that. I would say... From the moment that they land on Coruscant, which was a neat scene, the whole, re-entering into the atmosphere and crashing it on the Iowa-sized runway, I guess, that they just had chilling, was fun, but I think they could have just cut that out and went right to the landing scene of Anakin meeting up with Padme, which that scene establishes so much between those two characters of the secrecy of their love affair, them literally hiding in the dark behind the pillar of the Jedi Order.
Yeah. There's a lot of...
Did they know that she was pregnant at that time?
No.
Or no?
She did.
She did.
She told him she was pregnant at that time.
At that moment?
Yes.
Yeah. That's amazing because then that's this big turbulent thing of, you don't even need to talk about the Jedi Order's stance on all of this. They know that, that's big.
Yeah, that being said... A big issue I have, from a factual standpoint, from a script standpoint, that's oh, okay, this is a lot of drama. I was saying that's more of a director's. I mean, yes, there was a lack of actors' chemistry, but also in this case, I think it's a director's thing.
I've just never been impressed with Natalie Portman.
Really?
I'll say it.
No, never.
Have you seen Black Swan?
Yes, and I thought she was dry.
Oh, well, I
dry
completely couldn't disagree with you more. I think she's a fantastic actress, given the right director. She's the type of actress who she needs direction, and given the right direction, she does extremely well, in my opinion.
I think
and I think most people agree with me who've seen Black Swan, but clearly the Academy does. Which
that's not a compliment.
It meant something back in the day. They
hasn't.
They
what are you
gave
talking
Joaquin
about?
Phoenix Joker. So, anyways, I would in no way. It's famous how bad of a director at directing actors George Lucas is. So I don't really feel like I need to beat that dead horse anymore.
No.
It's been said many times, and it's many actors, even the ones from the OT, said that.
Yeah, Luke got more direction from Alan McGuinness than he did George.
Yeah, Alec Guinness. Anyways, so let's kind of wrap up.
Well, wait. There's a few things we got to blow through real fast. First off, this movie could have been rated R, and it could have been better. Because there's
a Star Wars movie rated R.
Yeah, I know. But there's some atrocious acts that occur in this movie that are not given the proper light of day. It's something like I really don't like when you show me an atrocious act, but then kidify it.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean by that?
Oh, if you're gonna show me something that's supposed to have shock value, don't censor it.
Yeah.
Censoring a shock value thing is like saying, I'm gonna punch you in the face, but I'm gonna put this pillow up first.
I do want to say that I did feel some things in this movie, which I think is the first time in the trilogy.
Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
I don't know if it's the music, but the whole sequence where all the Jedis die, like as that I still find that like
the entire
kind of touching.
The entire sequence of Anakin walking into the Jedi temple with clones behind him is, I think that's my. If I had to rate the darkest moment in Star Wars, it's that.
Oh yeah.
Not the moment when he walks into the younglings and sets his lightsaber.
That changed my perspective on it.
Reading it?
Yeah,
you read the book too?
I read the book, and it makes that scene not happy in the slightest. It is a no bueno.
No bueno.
It is a big no bueno. And I also think the Mustafar stuff that leads after that is really strong as well.
Yeah. What's a really weak connector period is right after Order 66 has taken place, when Obi-Wan and Yoda have to somehow magically infiltrate, and by that I mean walk right into the Jedi Temple after they took it again, kill everybody, and just kind of peruse the library.
It's one of those
such
things
a
where like
suspension of disbelief, and I can suspend mine. Even me, I have to look at that and go, wow.
Even you have your limits.
Yeah.
I think that makes a really, really, really good point. Also, the fact that this movie kind of a lot of the events of I hate to say it, this movie is contradicted in a few ways too as a result of the Clone Wars now.
Yeah. Which
really makes me kind of like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But that's neither here nor there. That doesn't blame. I'm not gonna blame the movie.
No,
for
you
that.
can't. I do think like this is definitely the best prequel movie, and it's in my my biased opinion, like I still enjoy it more than a lot of other Star Wars movies, but from a filmmaking perspective, it still has some major flaws. From the way it conveys its story, from inconsistency with the characters. It has a lot of major flaws, so I can't like sit there and defend it that much. From a filmmaking perspective.
Yeah.
That being said, I still really can get a lot of enjoyment out of it. I mean, there's a lot of fun to be had in this movie. I mean, I think that Obi-Wan's side quest with General Grievous, it's kind of pointless for the story. Like, the only point is, that's like the last hammer in the nail for the... Yeah. But even then, it isn't. You could have just had General Grievous with all the other Jedis and had Anakin go kill him with all the other Separatists. Because he was the last general, but there were still tons of Separatists left.
He was the only dangerous general. Because Dooku was out of the way, Grievous needed to be gone, so he could have his moment where he just slaughters all of the old crotchety banker people.
But, I still enjoyed, the memes, oh, you're a bold one, or, hello there. Like, all that stuff's fun. But maybe not for the reason it was intended. I found that they were so
uncivilized.
Yeah. But, it has its moments, but it also, it's one of those movies that you have to shut your brain off to an extent, which means that, the criticisms are still valid of that film, but I think most of the time, most people can have fun with it.
Of course. And then, just because we need to touch again on the Mustafar scene, specifically the ending, because the fight is a fight. It's not as good as Duel of the Fates, but it is definitely
there's
up
like
there.
Emotion there, but not like the choreography is there. You get what I mean by that?
I mean, there's great moments of choreography.
It goes much too long. I think like what would have helped it is if they just stuck to like a cliffside like of a volcano. You can have your lava and stuff, but just keep it simple. You don't need to be jumping to the top of the falling lava.
I loved all the movement. It's great.
I don't like that at all. I think it's like, oh, we just got to be big, and it loses a lot of emotion and all that. I'm like, so now you're swinging in this thing.
What happened to turn your brain off?
Well, there's an extent. I'm just recommending ways that would have made it better.
I do think it's too long.
But anyways, going to the end though, just I wanted to talk about the ending and the emotion or lack thereof of Obi-Wan and Anakin after Anakin's been beaten. He's been disarmed, dislegged. He's laying on the bank of this lava river, and Obi-Wan just kind of yells at him.
Yeah, there's a lot of the dialogue, which it still has a lot of weak dialogue, especially that whole ending, like from the moment Obi-Wan shows up, Anakin just kind of turns into a baby. Like the way he shows anger is by acting like a child.
Right.
When like he's like, "Oh, you turned her against me. If you're not with me, you're my enemy," and it's like.
That's about how he delivers it too.
Oh gosh, do we have to be? Do we need this right now? I think that you can just watch Revenge of the Sith over the prequel trilogy. I think that it's an alright trilogy, like overall, like big picture. But the closer you look, the worse it gets. And that's my opinion.
I'd agree. I would say that it's not a movie to be picked apart, because if you do that, the entire thing's going to unravel. You know, it's a nice, comfy sweater with a lot of loose ends, and you don't want to pull any of them.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
I'd say Phantom Menace is worth watching, and then Attack of the Clones is just filler going into Revenge of the Sith. But I definitely agree with Sky that there's instances a lot of the time where they didn't space it out enough for the gravity of what's going on, and then in other instances they give way too much time between events that really deserve no pause. You know, it could have been said the same breath. Worth a watch as, you know, a whole. Definitely not the best Star Wars has to offer, but definitely not the worst either.
Is this where we tell them instead go watch the Clone Wars series?
Yes.
Yeah, just watch the Clone Wars.
Just watch.
Yeah, because that one tells you lots of cool stories that aren't even directly related to the bigger picture.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tell them.
And those are just cool in like their own little.
They give you
instant situations.
Personality.
We don't say that word in this house. Not with Lucas around.
What do you think? All right, so that means that next up we're gonna be talking about.
So yeah,
sequels.
We're gonna, after we do the sequels, we're gonna probably rejuvenate the show a little bit, with our style. As you can see, Will's not here. He's not gonna probably be doing the sequels with us. We're kind of TBD on when he'll be joining us again, when or if. But we are gonna try to get more consistent. So let's keep it up. Let's have a good time. Let's rock some lightsabers. What's a Star Wars reference?
Yeah, that's
pod racing.
No,
podcasting.
I hate.
I already made that joke.
The end.